Secondly, you will move out of the main house and into the boys' quarter at the back. It will suit you better. Thirdly, you will change schools from your private school to a public one. I don't have that money to spend on you. And finally, you will only eat once a day. Clara was heartbroken. She pleaded with Ella. Once upon a time, in the lively city of Lagos, Nigeria, there lived a teenage girl named Clara. Clara was bright, ambitious and beautiful. She had a wonderful life with her father, Mr. Collins, and her mother, Mrs. Collins. Mr. Collins was a successful architect, and Mrs. Collins was a respected banker. They were a close-knit family who loved each other very much. They always take care of each other and enjoyed doing things together. Mr. Collins was a well-respected man who made sure to provide everything his family needed. He loved his wife and daughter deeply and worked hard to make sure they were happy and comfortable. Mrs. Collins was equally dedicated to her family. She made sure that everything in their lives was in order and that their home was a warm and loving place. Clara was the pride and joy of her parents. After she was born, they tried to have another child, but were not successful. Despite this, they showered Clara with all the love and care they had, making sure she had everything she needed and more. The Collins family was united by their strong bond, and their love for one another was evident in everything they did. One day, Mrs. Collins became very ill and had to go to the hospital. When she was examined, the doctors found out she had cancer. This news was a big shock to her family and made them very sad. Mr. Collins felt very worried and didn't know what to do. Clara was heartbroken to see her beloved mother so sick. Mr. Collins asked the doctors to do everything they could to help his wife. He promised that he would spend whatever was needed to make sure she got the best care. The doctors worked hard, but they told Mr. Collins that the cancer was already at stage 3. They said only a miracle could save her right now. Sadly, Mrs. Collins passed away early on a Monday morning. Clara could not stop crying. She loved her mom very much and couldn't imagine living without her. Her mother had always given her so much love and care. Clara's tears fell endlessly as she thought about her mother. Mr. Collins was devastated and at a loss for words. He missed his wife deeply and felt an emptiness that was hard to bear. They held a simple and quiet funeral to say their final goodbyes and laid Mrs. Collins to rest. The days after Mrs. Collins' death were very tough for both Clara and Mr. Collins. Life had to continue though. After a few months of mourning and staying at home, Mr. Collins returned to work. Clara was very reluctant to go back to school and wanted to stay home because of the death of her mother. However, her father spoke to her, explaining that her mother would have wanted her to keep going to school and not just cry all the time. With this encouragement, Clara agreed and went back to school, trying her best to move forward despite the pain. Adapting to life without Mrs. Collins was very hard for Mr. Collins. Every morning, he had to wake up early to get Clara ready for school. He would prepare her breakfast and make sure she had everything she needed. Mr. Collins also had to take care of the house, sometimes, and handle many other tasks. The family felt the absence of Mrs. Collins deeply. Her presence had been so important, and missing her made everything seem even harder. Mr. Collins often had to cancel work trips that took him outside the state or country. He didn't want to leave Clara alone at home, so he stayed nearby as much as possible. On some busy days, he would forget to attend important meetings at Clara's school, like parent-teacher meetings. Balancing work and caring for Clara was very challenging for him, as he was a very busy man. After a few years, Mr. Collins realized that he needed a partner to help him manage life and care for Clara. He thought that as Clara grew older and prepared for university, it would be nice to have someone by his side as well. He also knew he was getting older and didn't want to be alone, so he decided to get married again. Mr. Collins hoped that a new partner could help take care of Clara and share the responsibilities that came with running a household, making life a little easier for everyone. After several months of searching for the right person, Mr. Collins met a woman named Ella. Ella was a single mother with a daughter named Amanda. She explained that she and her ex-husband had divorced because they realized they were no longer a good match for each other. After going on a number of dates and getting to know each other better, Mr. Collins and Ella decided to get married. They introduced their daughters, Clara and Amanda, to each other. Clara was a little unsure about the whole situation, but agreed to give it a chance. However, she soon found Amanda to be quite awkward and irritating. Amanda didn't seem interested in talking to Clara or getting to know her. As time went by, Clara began to notice small troubling things. She saw how her stepmother Ella would treat her poorly whenever Mr. Collins was away on business trips. When her father was home, Ella would act very kind and loving, but Clara could tell that the kindness was not always genuine. Then one day, while Mr. Collins was working in his office, the police arrived and arrested him. He was taken to the police station, where it was discovered that a client of his had stolen a large sum of money and used the money to pay for Mr. Collins' services. The police suspected Mr. Collins was involved in the crime. Despite his attempts to explain that he had no idea about the stolen money, the police did not believe him. He was kept in custody with no plans to release him soon. Mr. Collins tried to reach out to all his lawyers for help, but the case was so serious that none of them could assist him. He found himself in a very difficult and troubling situation, feeling helpless and trapped. When Ella, his wife, learned that Mr. Collins might not be released from prison for a long time, she felt a sense of relief and happiness. She saw this as her chance to take control of everything. Since Mr. Collins would be away, she believed she would inherit all his money and properties. Ella felt that she and Amanda could now enjoy a comfortable life without any worries. For Clara, the news about her father was devastating. She felt deeply saddened and unhappy. She was also worried about how her stepmother, Ella, would treat her. Clara knew that Ella did not like her and would likely make her life difficult. This made Clara cry all day, feeling overwhelmed by the situation. The next day, Ella called Clara and Amanda to the living room. With a serious look, Ella announced, "From now on, things are going to be different around here. First, you should know that my daughter Amanda and I are not to be questioned. You will do everything we tell you to do. Secondly, you will move out of the main house and into the boys' quarter at the back. It will suit you better. Thirdly, you will change schools from your private school to a public one. I don't have that money to spend on you. And finally, you will only eat once a day." Clara was heartbroken. She pleaded with Ella, "Please ma, this is too much. I can't be treated like this in my father's house." But Ella coldly replied, "Well, your father is far away in prison and he can't help you now. He might even rot there." Amanda, standing next to her mother, just laughed. Clara felt devastated and cried uncontrollably. She spent the whole day weeping as she packed her belongings and moved to the boys' quarters. The space was small and dark, making Clara's sadness even more intense as she tried to adjust to her new painful reality. After moving to the boys' quarter, Clara's life changed drastically. Her stepmother Ella dismissed all the household staff and made Clara take on their duties. Clara was now responsible for cooking, cleaning, and doing all the chores around the house, while her stepsister Amanda enjoyed a life of comfort and luxury. Clara was heartbroken and confused. She didn't understand why Ella treated her so poorly. She missed her mother deeply and wished her father was there to help her. Every day, Clara cried, feeling alone and overwhelmed by the hard work and unfair treatment. When Ella had parties or events, she would dress Amanda in beautiful, expensive clothes, while Clara had to wear old, worn-out outfits. Clara was often seen carrying bags and helping out, and Ella would even introduce her as her maid to her friends. This always hurt Clara deeply and made her feel even more like an outsider. Ella also made sure that Clara's new school was far from her old private school, with all the extra chores she had to do. Clara often arrived late to school. Her days were filled with constant work, leaving her exhausted and stressed. At meal times, Clara didn't get proper food. Ella and Amanda would eat all the food Clara prepared and leave only the leftovers for her. Clara was often left with very little to eat, and the lack of good nutrition made her look pale and sickly. One day, Clara, feeling extremely hungry, found a plate of food in the kitchen and ate it. While Amanda returned from school and discovered that the food was gone, she became very upset and started crying. She called her mother and told her what happened, saying, "Mommy, you won't believe. Clara ate the food you left for me." Ella was furious when she heard this and said sharply over the phone, "What? How dare she? I will teach that girl a big lesson when I get home." When Ella arrived back, she went straight to the boys' quarters where Clara was. She dragged Clara out and punished her harshly. Clara's body was covered in bruises and scars from the severe beating, and she cried uncontrollably. Ella told her, "You won't be given any food for the next 3 days. That will be your punishment." Clara begged for mercy, but no one listened to her pleas. As Clara laid in the boys' quarters, hungry and in pain, she kept wishing her father was there to protect her and that her mother was still alive. Clara tried very hard to contact her father while he was in prison, but it was impossible. Her stepmother Ella refused to tell her where Mr. Collins was being held. Clara didn't have a phone number or any way to reach out to him. She was very worried and felt very sad, not knowing how her father was doing or if he was safe. Ella treated Clara very badly. She did nothing to help Clara, while Amanda, her own daughter, enjoyed all the luxuries and comforts. Clara felt very alone and neglected, and the unfair treatment from Ella made her situation even worse. Meanwhile, Mr. Collins was determined to prove his innocence. Even though he was in prison, he kept in touch with his lawyers and others who could help him with the investigation. He knew he was not guilty of the charges against him and wanted the truth to come out. He urged his lawyers to work as hard as they could to clear his name. Mr. Collins missed his daughter terribly. He was also troubled to learn that Ella never visited him and that she was spending his money extravagantly. His lawyers told him how Ella was treating Clara unfairly, which made Mr. Collins feel very sad. However, this news also motivated him to fight even harder to find the truth and be released from the prison. His lawyers and investigators worked diligently, and after a lot of effort, they uncovered the truth. They discovered that Mr. Collins had nothing to do with the people who stole the money. The real criminals were found and arrested, and Mr. Collins was finally released from prison. He was overjoyed to be free. Although his lawyers knew about his release, no one else, including Clara and Ella, was aware that he had been set free. Mr. Collins was eager to reunite with his daughter and correct the wrongs that had been done to her. He quickly went to his house, and what he saw broke his heart. His daughter, his dearest daughter Clara, was in a terrible state. She looked very unkempt and she was hungry and sick. She was sitting alone in the compound. Mr. Collins was shocked to see her like this and immediately called out to her. Clara looked up, surprised and relieved to see her father after a very long time. "Oh, Daddy, it is you. How are you? I've missed you so much," she said, starting to cry. Mr. Collins asked Clara where her stepmom and her child were. Clara told him that they had gone to a party and had left her all alone. Mr. Collins was very surprised. "You mean they left you all alone here?" he asked. Clara nodded and confirmed that it was true. Clara began to tell her father everything. She explained that she now lived in the boys' quarters, went to a public school, and how difficult things had become. Mr. Collins was at a loss for words. He felt deeply disappointed and very angry at how Clara had been treated. He gently wiped away Clara's tears and reassured her not to worry about anything. He promised her that he would take care of everything from now on. Mr. Collins was sitting patiently in the parlor, waiting for Ella and her daughter to return. When Ella finally walked in and saw him, she was stunned. "What? I thought you were going to stay in prison for a long time, or better still forever. How come you are out now?" Ella asked, clearly surprised. Collins did not answer her questions. Instead, he looked at her with a stern face and said, "Ella, I left my daughter in your care and you did not take care of her properly. Just look at how she looks. Ella, I am very disappointed." He continued, "You made my daughter a maid in her own father's house. You were supposed to be like a mother to her. This is very sad, Ella." Ella started to make excuses and deny the situation. "Oh no, that's not true. Clara was very stubborn. She never listened to me," she said quickly. Collins became even more angry and said, "No, Ella, that's not true. I won't take that. Clara is a very obedient and kind young girl. I raised her and I know exactly what she is like and how she behaves." Ella began to beg and apologize. "Please, I am sorry, Collins. I didn't know what came over me. I promise this won't happen again," she pleaded, hoping to make things right. Collins replied firmly, "Of course it won't happen again because I am ending this marriage. I don't need you anymore. We've been married for just a few months and you have not been a good person." He continued, "I know you married me for my money. It's clear that you don't care about me or my daughter. Please take your own daughter and leave my house. I hope you will take better care of her from now on." Collins looked at her with disappointment and said, "It's best for both of us if we go our separate ways. I want to make sure my daughter is in a better place, and I hope you will be a better mother to your own child." Ella and her daughter felt very ashamed of themselves. They packed their bags and left the house quickly, feeling embarrassed and regretful. After they had gone, Mr. Collins called his daughter Clara into the sitting room. He looked at her with tears in his eyes and apologized deeply. He was very hurt to see his daughter suffer so much. Clara, understanding that her father was not to blame, told him to stop crying. She reassured him that everything was going to be okay. Mr. Collins worked hard to make sure everything went back to normal. He enrolled Clara back into a private school, hired the maids again, and made sure Clara had everything she needed. She never lacked anything and was well taken care of. Mr. Collins made a promise to Clara that he would never marry again. Clara was very happy with this promise, and they both felt a sense of peace. They continued to live happily ever after, enjoying their time together as a very little family. Thank you for watching. This is Tales by Joyful. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also turn on your post notification so you'll be notified whenever we post another story. See you next time. Bye.